Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips, folks. In front of me, you see a bunch of drives. We've got some hard drives, we've got some SSDs. They all have something in common. These are RMA slips. They're all dead. So why do we have a bunch of dead drives here? Well, this is a bit of an educational episode on how devices fail and how to protect yourself from it and how to tell when they're failing. So without further ado, solid-state drives are becoming more and more popular. Their price and low capacity are still barriers to using them exclusively, so if you have a computer, you probably have a mechanical hard drive, and all mechanical devices fail. It is simply a matter of when. With that said, it's not like SSDs don't fail too. They have a finite number of write cycles that they can withstand before they eventually die, but hard drives can be a little bit less predictable. So the most common causes for hard drive failure are heat, although this has been hotly debated back and forth how much of a factor it is, so bear that in mind. More heat, this is from WD. I talked to them about it. They said, yes, more heat is bad. So in general, heat is not good for your hard drive. Physical trauma is terrible for hard drives. If you've ever had a portable hard drive and went to put it in your pocket and dropped it on the ground, there's a good chance that it is dead at that point. And then, of course, general wear and tear. So time is the last major factor for hard drive failure. So how do you know when your hard drive is going to fail? Hopefully, your drive fails gradually. This is an advantage on the hard drive side where a lot of the time they will start to give you signs and symptoms so you can have a chance to go, oh no, that's probably failing. I should probably back that up. Whereas SSDs can fail quite suddenly and data recovery from them in most cases is nearly impossible. With that said, I'm glad that there are Samsung drives here because their Magician software can give you some hints when you get close to the end of the usable life cycle. It'll be monitoring it. It'll slow it down to preserve it for as long as it can. And it'll give you some time in order to back up the data that's on them. So here are some signs of impending doom. Extremely slow transfer rates, like slow, like a couple minutes to copy a picture, or even if you notice any kind of dramatic slowdown in your hard drive, it could be getting close to the end of its life cycle. Next up is any kind of odd noises. Now the sound of a read head moving back and forth, that tick, 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 that's okay. But if you hear any other kinds of clicking sounds, or if it's making sounds when it's sitting idle and not actually doing anything, that could be a big problem. The next one to look out for is corrupted files that are just inexplicably corrupted or fail to open. Sometimes that can point to a RAM issue, but a lot of the time that can have to do with your hard drive. And oh, another time that can crop up is if you have an overclocked system and you've accidentally overclocked something like the SATA bus. Then the drive might not be dead, but it might still end up with corrupted data on it. Now this is something that both SSDs and hard drives have in common, and that is S.M.A.R.T is a great way to find out if the drives are working. So that is a test, and it's constantly running on supported hardware. Most motherboards support S.M.A.R.T these days, and you can get software utilities that'll actually tell you the S.M.A.R.T status of your drives, and it checks a whole bunch of attributes, including read errors, reallocated sectors, failing block counts, erase fails, wear leveling, lifetime used. This is all sort of for all this stuff, and keeps an eye on the drive's status. S.M.A.R.T will often tell you that a drive is failing while you still have time to back up the data off it, as long as it's not, we're talking about dropping it out of a pocket and the thing's just dead. So how can you extend the life of your hard drive? Well, number one is try not to jostle or drop your computer. That's a bad thing. Next up, make sure your hard drives are screwed in properly. With SSDs, it is not a factor. Physically, they cannot really be affected unless you take a baseball bat to them. I've done that before. It was awesome. It was all over the place. For laptops, wait until your drive spins down when you go into sleep mode before picking up your laptop. Taking hard drives, which are spinning at anywhere from like 5,000 to 7,000 or even 10,000 RPM on high-end models, take anything that's spinning and try to have it not be completely horizontal or completely vertical. You'll feel a force working against you. That happens in hard drives too. They're spinning quickly, and when you hold them at weird angles, it is bad for the spindle motor. Keep your hard drive reasonably cool. This is another thing. Just, fans somewhere nearby buy are never a terrible thing when it comes to computer hardware. Hard drives are usually at the front of the case, so grab an intake fan and chuck it in there. They don't cost a whole lot. If your laptop runs particularly hot, maybe grab a laptop cooler. I've personally found that particularly with some laptops, like gaming models that have really powerful fans, they don't make much of a difference. But with something like a Razer blade, where the chassis is actually responsible for getting rid of some of the heat, that kind of thing could come in very, very handy. Okay, so theoretically, the most power is consumed when a hard drive is spinning up, but it is a bit of a myth that it's better to keep your hard drive running 24/7 rather than turning it on and turning it off. So we do recommend, as sort of our final tip, turn your system off when you're not using it. Less wear and tear is always a good thing because it helps you counteract that whole time factor. Of course, monitoring smart data, as we mentioned before, is highly recommended. Wheels recommends Hard Disk Sentinel, which is an SSD and hard drive monitoring program, but there will be utilities that often the manufacturer will provide, and those ones can give you a little bit more granularity or other options for performance tuning your system. So it's about 30 bucks, but it runs in the background, shows expected lives, temperatures, and all kinds of cool stuff, so it's definitely highly recommended. So thank you guys for checking out this video. The last thing I want to say is, all of that said, you won't always get warning. Backing up is essential. Backing up is not the same as running RAID or redundancy. Backing up means taking all the data that is in one place, putting it somewhere else entirely where it is protected not only from a physical failure, but also from something like a virus. There's some pretty nasty stuff going around right now, where by accidentally installing something and giving it admin access to your system, people are ending up with their files encrypted, and then they are being held ransom, so they have to actually pay in order to get an encryption key. With the data encrypted, there is no recovering it. The keys that these guys are using are pretty scary and require data that's stored sort of locally and on their server, and they don't have to give you access to that. So always back up, especially for anything that you actually care about, things like precious family memories. We all keep so much stored digitally these days. That's pretty much it. I hope that that wasn't too overwhelming. Thank you for checking out this episode of NCIX Tech Tips, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this from ncix.com.